Okay, hi everyone. This is to go through the Sec 2 GA1 review. Okay, because we didn't have lessons to go through, so this is to go through review. Please make sure you do your corrections. The answer key will not be printed for you. Okay, now question 1, where you are asked to use the population density to calculate the total population and land area. Most of you did quite well. Okay, part 1, almost everyone calculated correctly. Part 2, a lot of correct calculation, but a lot of careless mistakes with rounding off. Okay, now you do not need to you do not need to calculate. You can just fill in the blanks with the numbers, because the question was just complete table. Okay, they didn't ask you to calculate, so you can just complete the table with the number. Now we don't really care how many significant figure you use, but please round off correctly. Okay, so to get the density, you divide the population over the land area. So to get the land area, you just manipulate, and most of you did this. Okay, so which is essentially 1780148 divided by 41515. Okay, now if you want to round off to no decimal place, then you should round off to 43, not 42. Okay, likewise, if you want to round off to one decimal place, since it's 87, 87 round off should become 0.87. When you round should become 0.9, not 0.8. Okay, likewise, if you want two decimal place, it should be 0.88, because it's 79. 9 round off to become 8 instead of 7. You should round up, because if you round off, you'll be rounding up. Okay, so if you're doing two decimal place, it should be 42.88, not 42.87. So a lot of careless mistakes. A lot of you are just cutting out numbers instead of rounding off properly. Okay, that is why you didn't get the mark. Okay, so please be careful. Next question, comparison. Okay, is very badly done, because a lot of you forgot what you have done in Sec 1, and of course you also did not use the terms you have learned. Okay, now this is what many of you do. You say that and also one last thing, the question asks for settlement. Settlements are places where people are in. Okay, so a settlement consists of housing, of education, of commercial areas, of industrial areas. They did not ask you to compare housing. Okay, so some of you go and compare formal, informal, you have not answered the question. All right, you should be comparing rural versus urban. Okay, second thing, rural areas are formal housing as well. Okay, just because they are rural doesn't mean they are not developed. Rural doesn't mean that they are illegal. Okay, just because it's single story. Okay, and I don't know how some of you can tell scrap metal when it looks like actually concrete to me. Okay, so rural doesn't mean it's informal housing. A lot of you go and mix up rural with informal. All right, third mistake, a lot of you did this in Sec 1. Okay, that's why it's written down, same issue as Sec 1. You do this, photograph A. Okay, you say that photograph A shows the settlement has low-rise building, mainly agriculture. Let me expand the font size. Okay, mainly agriculture activity. Okay, then you go to photograph B. You say it's high-rise building. Then range of functions. There's basically there's education, commercial, residential as well. Okay, now if you do this, it's not comparison. All right, because you're simply describing photograph A, describing photograph B. There is no comparison. Okay, I have to match for you, so that's why it's a 0. All right, now some of you do this low-rise building, but photograph B has education, commercial, and all this. If you do this, is what I call mismatch, because you're not comparing the same criteria. Okay, it's like if I ask you to compare between two people, you say this person has long hair, but the person has brown eyes. Hair length and eye color mismatch. Okay, so some of you, if you see this mismatch, it's because you are not matching the same criteria. Okay, now lastly, a lot of you are not using proper terms. You use, instead of saying low rise and high rise, which are terms you learned, you go and use words like low building, tall building. Okay, so use terms that you have learned. So some of the acceptable answers, for example, low rise versus high rise. Okay, also when you compare, please use conjunctions like but or however to suggest that you're comparing. If you just say mostly low rise, mostly high rise without conjunction, it sounds like you're just describing photograph A, photograph B. It's not a valid comparison. Okay, next, for example, now some of this you need to infer. Okay, so you need to provide the evidence plus the inference. All right, so this one, mainly agriculture versus this one, what is the inference? It's the range of function. You have learned range of function already. Okay, so you can say that photograph B, settlement in photograph B has a larger range of function than photograph A. Larger range, larger, ER word, I'm showing comparison already. Okay, so how can you do it? Okay, so photograph A shows mainly agricultural activity, but in B, okay, so this is one mark, the proper term. Then providing evidence, comparing evidence is also another mark. Okay, photograph B, it shows a variety of buildings that can serve different functions, such as commercial or residential, things like that. Okay, so one mark for the range of function, and then one mark for giving me the evidence. Okay, other possible answers. Now, some of you say more space, less space, greenery. Hello, greenery. Building has plants is also called greenery. Okay, so what's the proper term? The proper term is built up area. Okay, has more built up area. You learn this in, or built area, you learn these terms already. Okay, in chapter 7. Okay, next, some of you are getting mixed up over population size. You just say big population. Do you mean population size or density? Okay, so photograph A has a lower population size than photograph B. Okay, you can provide evidence because there are less houses. Okay, then you want to talk about density. You can talk about in the same amount of space. Okay, so what's the evidence? Well, you can say that photo A has less housing, and they are low rise in the same area, while B has more buildings that are higher rise, suggesting there are more people in the same area. Okay, so the density is about number of people in the same area. So you need to bring in the how many people in the same area idea come in. Okay, so you have learned these 4 characteristics. Population size, let me type it out. Population size, population density. You also learn about the range of functions. Okay, you also learn about the built area, the amount of built area. So you can use this as a starting point. Now there's only 4 marks. You need because there is the evidence comparison and comparing the proper terms. You need not provide all 4. Okay, so like here, it can be a case of the proper term and then the evidence another mark. All right. So please make sure you compare criteria by criteria. Don't go and give me whole thing, everything about photograph A, then everything about photograph B. Okay, that is not a comparison. Now lastly, a lot of you remember that in Sec 1, a comparison, we should try to give similarity and differences. Now if there's a case where there's no similarity, then so be it, all 4 marks is for differences. Okay, now those provide similarity, you will not mark wrong. All right, it's just that you are repeating the ideas that's already in the definition, so it's not really looking for the photograph. Okay, lastly, remember the question asks you to use photograph A and B. Some of you go and say that photograph B has more infrastructure like expressways, ports, airports. Where are the ports and airports in the photograph? Okay, then some of you said photograph B has more clean water supply. Where are the pipes? I don't see underground. Okay, so please be careful with using the photograph. You must always observe first. All right, so that's all for part 2, question 2. Okay, I'll move on to question 3. Now question 3, most of you are able to compare similarity and differences. Okay, but there are some issues that you need to watch out for. Okay, so how do we give the mark for 4 marks? Similarity 1 mark, providing evidence 1 mark, difference 1 mark, providing differences another mark. Okay, there's multiple similarity and differences to talk about, so you can do there's multiple right answers. Okay, ideally you should follow what you have done in describing trends in the past, where you talk about overall, then the most, the least, and the anomalies. Okay, but for this case, because it's new to you, we do not require you to do everything. All right, so as long as you see one similarity, 1 mark, evidence another mark, then difference 1 mark, evidence another mark. Okay, So those with the S means similarity, you got for the similarity mark, all right? So multiple similarities, a lot of you can say that both decreased from 1995 to 2020, okay? Or some of you say it decreased from 2005 to 2015, okay? Or both increased from 1995 to 2005, also can. But please use words like both to suggest that they are similar, okay? The problem with many of you is that you did not calculate the percentage properly to go and to justify as evidence. So you lose out mark for the evidence, okay? Then differences, there's multiple differences. Some of you said that the failure is 2015 to 2020. Belize remains the same, but Panama increased by how many percent, okay? So yes, a lot of you provide the increase, but you never tell me Belize stay at what amount. So you must tell me that it stays at 16.7%, okay? So other possible difference, you can add on to, you can say that yes, from 2005 to 2020, yes, they all decrease. That's the similarity, but the difference may be the amount that they decrease is different. Okay, so for example, over here, you can say in the similarity that 1995 to 2005 both increase. Okay, but then Belize increased more. For difference, Belize increased more than Panama. All right, and then tell me how's the difference in decrease, or in difference in the amount that change. Okay, so multiple right answers that you can talk about. You can say that Panama shows a greater decrease, okay, overall. Okay, so please insert the year. Some of you did insert the year. From 1995 to 2015, right? Sorry, 1995 to 2020. Okay. All right. So you can also talk about, yeah, which one has a greater increase for which year. So let's say 1995 2005, you can say that one has a greater increase. Okay. All right, so these are some of the possible ways that you can talk about. So as you can see, there's more than 4 marks worth of answer to write about. All right, now let's move on to question 4. Okay, annotation. Annotation, I think most of you will see S and E. Why? Because E stands for evidence. You must describe what's in the photograph. All right. Then S, you must use, then link it back to the concepts and the proper term, the statements that you have learned. Okay, so like for example, some of you say that it is made of flimsy material. So what has it got to do with the feature? What does it say about feature? You can say that it's poor quality housing, or some of you say that the housing is not safe. Okay, so link it back to the features. What's so special about this housing? All right, the toilet also. A lot of you say that you say that the toilet looks self-built, okay, with flimsy materials. Okay, so that is the evidence. Okay, but what statement can you make then? All right, what statement can you say? So, which means that there is a lack of sanitation facilities. So what does it suggest? That means there's a lack of infrastructure. Okay, so a lot of you just talk about sanitation, never talk about infrastructure. All right, then so a lot of you talk about rubbish. All right, so what does the rubbish means? Okay, so you all can see that there's rubbish along the river. That's the evidence. But what is the statement? Okay, there's inadequate access to rubbish disposal facilities, or you can say that there's or you can even better, you can link it to, okay, meaning that they lack basic services. Okay, then some of you said that they are near river and therefore it is undesirable. No, there's a lot of housing that's near river that's desirable. What? Okay, you see, there are housings that's near river because the river provides a nice view. So why is it undesirable? Why is it locally unwanted land? What do you see that makes it locally unwanted? Okay, so you can say things like it is polluted, because a lot of you say that it's polluted river. So it's built next to river, next to a polluted river, which makes the land locally unwanted land use. Okay, so, or which means it is found on locally unwanted land use. All right. Now, some we talk about mosquito breeding. Okay, evidence about polluted water. Okay, then link it to feature. What does it say about this housing? Okay, that the housing is poor for health. Okay, or is unsanitary, or is on locally unwanted land use. Okay, some of you say that it's built very cramped, very close together. Good evidence. What's the statement? Some of you mentioned say that it makes it a poor living condition. Okay, right? Lastly, some of you are very weird. Okay, we clarify by telling you that this is rubbish. So when you annotate, you should point to the rubbish. I don't know why you like to point to the label. Okay, you point to the label of the label. It's like I ask you, can you tell me where is the school? Then you point to me. Instead of pointing to the building, you point to the street sign that points to the school. Okay, so annotate means you point directly to the picture. The label is just to help you. Don't point to the label. Okay, so as you can see, there's more than 3 possible answers. 1 evidence plus statement, that will be 1 mark. Okay, so a lot of you lose marks because you either didn't provide the evidence or you didn't provide the statement that uses the concepts you have learned. All right, now let's go on to the last question. Last question is generally quite okay, but a lot of missing parts. All right, now firstly, a lot of you talk about, a lot of you can recognize that A and B are actually part of the poor quality housing. A lot of you can identify that it is at rivers, okay, and at marshlands. Some of you say that it's at the coast. My question is, where is the sea? There's no sea that's labeled inside the map one. Okay, so how do we give marks? 1 mark to describe location of barrio A, 1 mark to account for the location of barrio A, 1 mark to describe B, account for B is the last mark. Okay, so barrio A, a lot of you talk about locally unwanted land use, okay, or undesirable land, all right, but so what? Why is it undesirable? You did not describe the location. Okay, so some of you said because it's near marsh, all right, so what? Okay, why is it undesirable? Because maybe it's prone to flooding, or maybe it's unstable land. Okay, and then when you explain, so that you can link to the explanation, they are forced to build there because they cannot afford other places, so they move to, that's why they have to move to vacant land that is unwanted to build their housing there. All right, some of you talk about industries, locally unwanted land, never link back to why. All right, so you can talk about pollution. It's unwanted, it's undesirable because there's a lot of pollution. Okay, but there's another reason, all right, which is written in your textbook as well. Okay, informal housing tends to be found near industries. Why? Because it is near to their workplace. Okay, now a lot of you just say they want to build near workplace, but why? Why? I can also go to work in other parts of the city, right? It's not like I need to live next to the school, okay, to work in this school. All right, I can travel to the school. So why is it that for informal housing, being next to the workplace matters? Because the main idea is that because they're so poor, they want to save money and save traveling time. That's why they're found next to the industries where they work. Okay, so a lot of you have some of the ideas in yellow, but because it's not fleshed out, it's not written out properly with the related ideas, then it makes the explanation very patchy and don't quite make sense. Okay, so it's not a case that you don't understand, but it's a case that you're not writing out the full logic. You're just dumping in words without checking, does one lead to the other properly? Remember, explaining is about how does one lead to the other. You must show me the steps. Okay, so if this is how you understand what went wrong, please do your correction. Okay, not by copying everything, but by inserting what's missing and understand why you made these mistakes. Okay, all the best.